I thought it'd be appropriate today, this being the first Sunday of Shiva for Rav Aharon Zatzal, to attempt to give over a shiur that I came across last night. I'm not going to be doing all of it, and I'm going to actually be changing part of it. But there's no question that the nucleus is definitely based on him, and it's a really very interesting insight into Sfiras OMER that hopefully you'll find both halachically and hashkafically interesting. We'll see what happens. Okay, first of all, let's get grounded in the two main sources for Sfiras OMER, and they come from Chumash. Like I think you're allowed to learn Chumash when you learn Gemara. Right? I think there's a heter for that. So source number one. Usvartem lachem imacharat Shabbat miyom haviachem et omer tnufa sheva Shabbatot tmimot tiena ad mimacharat Shabbat hashvit tispru 50 yom v'graftem mincha chadasha l'Hashem. Okay. What is the Torah emphasizing here? What elements of Sfiras OMER are being highlighted here in these two psukim? What are the elements? And what's the emphasis in these two psukim? What would you say? Because I want to contrast that to source 2.
The fact that you have to count.
So first of all, we see there's an imperative to count. Usvartem lachem. One. So we're told we have to count. Okay, good. What else are we told? Sorry? Okay, very good. And it immediately says that when you do this, okay, for the day after Shabbat, which we know is the first day of Pesach, right? And what do you have to do? Bring the Omer. Right? And what are you leading to? V'yikraftem mincha chadasha. So we see there's a korban in the beginning and a korban at the end. Right? Okay, good. What else? Let's read number 2 already. It'll be easier to contrast if we read it as well. So here, source number 2 is Shiva Shavuot Tispor Lach Me Hachel Chermeish Bakama Techel Lispor Shiva Shavuot V'asita Chag Shavuot Lecha Da 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 da. Here it's very different, right? So now maybe a little bit easier actually to do it this way. If you had to compare and contrast 1 to 2, what would be the items to compare and contrast?
Lachem and Lach.
Okay, so immediately you see Lachem and Lach, whereas Lashon Rabim in source 1 and Yachid in source 2. Good. What else?
What's like Me'achel Chamesh Bakama?
That's a very strange way of defining it, right? Yeah. From the beginning of the stock, right? Yeah. Sport, but again, it's okay. So it's similar to Omer, Tenufa, similar to the agricultural emphasis, but not quite the same.
Mention of Chag. The first one doesn't say Chag; it just says you're bringing.
Okay, very good. The Yontif is identified as this Mincha Hashem. Now, the truth is, it's not so fair because there's also Pasuk Yud Zayin, right? Which will actually be a little bit more. What's the next part you landed? No. Right. Okay, so it goes into even more the Chag, right? So not fair, but okay.
I would say that the Bar focuses more on the fact that there's this Chag associated with it, and Vayikra focuses more on the Korban itself.
Okay, now remember that the Vayikra is in Parshat Moedim, right? It's in the midst of all the Chagim, right?
Tzimimot.
Okay, Tzimimot only is in source 1. What else is very different that's highlighted by these two sources? Take a look at again, that's very korban related. That's very, but take a look at the middle of Pasuk Tet Zayin. Says Tispru 50 yom. Is there any mention of days in source 2?
No.
There's no mention of days. Source 2 is just about weeks. We know, how do we count? So my son came to ask my son, my 6-year-old was given a chart for school, and on it I had numbers 1 to 49, and every day puts a sticker. So he's always behind on Sunday, right? Because like Friday night he didn't do it. Master Shabbos, then he forgot, so you have to like catch up. So okay, so it says, Abba, what day is it today, right? So I said to him, today's the 22nd day of the Omer. So he says, it's the 3rd week. So I'm like, I guess like kind of, right? Like it is true. It is the beginning of the 3rd week. Now that wasn't the way I associate it in my head because I'm so, Shnei Shavuot and whatever days it is, right? But the truth is, he is correct. We are in the third week of the Omer. So what I found fascinating, and the way the chart that he was given was divided up, 7 rows, and each row was a different week. So the way the teacher broke it up was to demonstrate, to highlight the week component of Shavuos, yet it's obviously every single day you had a sticker. I don't know how much thought the teacher put into it, right? But it's interesting how you do have this 7 weeks, which constitute a component of the days. So when we count, we say today's the 22nd day of the OMER, which is Shehem 2 weeks, right? And 1 day. So we have both components. The question is, if I just had my source in Devarim, why did you count days for it? Source 1 is both weeks and days. So the question is, what is the relationship between singular plural, weeks and days? Is it what's more chag related, less chag related, more korban related? So I think this is gonna play out how we define the nature of the holiday and perhaps even different dimensions from a halachic perspective. So let's take a look now at source number 3. So again, just to remind ourselves, source number 1 highlights weeks and days. It's plural. We see there's the idea of the OMER that's involved, right? The truth is, in source 2, it doesn't even say OMER anywhere, right? There's no OMER. It's about just the weeks. It's much more about Shavuos, right? Chag Shavuot, I think someone said it's about the Chag of Shavuot, which isn't even mentioned in source number 1. Okay. 3. Amar Abaye, mitzvah l'meinei yomei, mitzvah l'meinei shavuot, says Abaye, mitzvah to count the days and the weeks. Rabbanan dvei Rabashi, umanu yomei, umanu shavuot. Rabbanan, yes. In the base measures, Ravashi, yes. There you go. You count the days, you count the weeks. Amemar manei yomei, v'lo manei shavuot. And on the other hand, he only counted the days, but he didn't count weeks. Amar zecher l'migdash. Who? How are we supposed to understand this Gemara Menachot? What is the machlok between Abaye and a Meimar? And what exactly is this phrase zecher l'migdashu? What is it coming to modify? And is a Meimar arguing and saying, oh no, Meimar is saying no, you hold that way because you hold it's not zecher l'migdash? Right? What we have to understand, how is this playing out? So we're going to see different, and I'm going to just summarize, just because it'll save us time. There are different shittot in the Rishonim. We're going to focus on one shita in particular. The first shita is, no, they have a machloket, even doraisa. Now, the machloket is a din doraisa. It's a biblical machloket, that according to the Torah, what do you count? Abaye? 2 weeks. A Meimar? No! Even Mina Torah, you only count the weeks.
Just the weeks.
Just the weeks. Then, how are you supposed to understand the phrase Zecher L'Mikdashu? He says, meaning, what's the reason why we have this din doraita of counting? It's Zecher L'Mikdash. Right? Meaning, that's why it's done. The other machloket is, no, this is machloket. What's the din d'Rabbanan? Maybe everyone agrees that Mina Torah you count days and weeks. Mina Torah. But since it's only today, Zecher L'Mikdash, says the Meimar, since it's just Zecher L'Mikdash, just do Shavuot, just do the weeks.
What does that mean, Zecher L'Mikdash?
So, the question is, what does it mean, Zecher L'Mikdash? So one could argue, one could say, in the Beit HaMikdash, it's very simple. If it's Korban Omer related, there's no Korban Omer today. Zecher L'Mikdash. Zecher L'Mikdash that they used to bring the Korban Omer. That's the din d'Rabbanan.
But why would it exclude days?
Oh, you saying what is it? Or why is it that I would exclude days from it?
Yeah, why does Zecher L'Mikdash include this?
Exclude the days and include just the weeks.
Right.
Thank you. So, the question. So one could say, listen, Mina Torah, you have to do the full package. Since we're just doing the Rabbanan, just do the weeks. Meaning you don't need to do it the exact same way. Or you could argue, no. This is with the other opinion. That may be what Abaye is saying. When you mimic a din doraita, even if it's Zecher L'Mikdash, do it the proper way. Mimic the days, mimic the weeks. So you're right. Why does a Meimar say, for the D'Rabbanan, who needs the, you don't need the days, the days. It's just the Zecher L'Mikdash. Usually when we do something, we parallel, right? Oh, by the way, we take Lulav and Etrog all 7 days. Just take the lulav. After day one, just take the lulav. Forget the etrog. You don't need the etrog anymore.
Right.
Now, what's the problem with that logic? Is that a rational argument?
No.
Why not? Because remember, you could argue that maybe there's two different mitzvot here. Maybe there's a mitzvah to count days, mitzvah to count weeks. And that's the opinion we're going to look at today.
So why is it not a rational argument?
Because with taking a lulav is nothing without arba minim.
Right.
You follow? Meaning, if you take 3 out of the 4 minim, what have you done?
Nothing.
You've done nothing. You need daled minim.
You can make the same argument here that, let's say, shiur OMER requires days and weeks. If you take out the days, then you're doing nothing.
Then you're doing nothing. So,
also, how do you count shiur OMER if it's just weeks? Once a week you count?
Yeah, well, once a week, right.
Also, this is kind of related, but this has been on my mind since we started. Don't we say that, like people always say, oh, tonight is, or last night was 21.
Right.
Because they don't want to count by mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't the halacha that really you can't say the whole equation? You can't say tonight is 22.
So if you just say tonight's 23,
chances
are you can still count the bracha. Because when you just say 23, you didn't say tonight is the 23rd day of the Omer, that would be problematic.
Or tonight is the 23rd day of the Omer,
with the weeks.
Which is, so isn't that the whole package? That's what I learned. The halacha is that you're only out if you...
Not out. You can't say the bracha later in a few minutes. Right. So, it will depend on, and this is what makes this topic so complicated, is that there's so many different shitas in the Rishonim. We're machmir not to do any shita of the Rishonim. So, because if you fulfilled one of the shita of the Rishonim, maybe you shouldn't maybe you lose your bracha, you can't recite with the bracha. So that would be the chumrah. So you're right. It could be just by saying the days you fulfilled your mitzvah. Right? As we might see, as hopefully we'll see in a minute. So, there's many different shitas in the Rishonim about the days and the weeks and what Abaye and Amem are arguing over. We do not have time to do with all of those shitas because they'll just take way too long. And as you can tolerate, it's very complicated. But what is he, right? I want to just zone in, just to be focused on today, on one shita. It is a very obscure shita. It's probably one of the less, it's well known, also not so well known. And it's fascinating shita. I think you'll find it very intriguing. It's the shita of Rabbeinu Yerucham. It's quoted in the Rambam in source 4. Rabbeinu Yerucham, you see in the middle there, there's like a bracket. It's Rabbeinu Yerucham. I'm going to tell you what Rabbeinu Yerucham says, and then we're going to read the Rambam. Rabbeinu Yerucham argues that there's 2 different mitzvot min haTorah. So, for example, if you were to take Taryag mitzvot, 2 out of the 613 for Rabbeinu Yerucham are Svat Omer. One is to count the days, and one is to count the weeks. 2 different mitzvot. Okay? Now, what makes the sheet of your Rabbeinu Yerucham very strange is it's the opposite of what you think. It's very counterintuitive. Meaning, if you want to hedge your bets, right? Okay. Which source do you think he says is the source to count days? And which source he says is the source to count weeks?
It's looking right here.
So
it says days.
So you'd think that source number 1 is the mitzvah to count days, and source 2 is count weeks. And he flips it. And that causes a big stir. Right? And Rav Soloveitchik said as he's going to use his approach, but modify it. And I'll explain what I mean. Okay, so again, Rabbeinu Yerucham holds there are 2 different mitzvot. One is to count the days, and one is to count the weeks. Now, here's what's also fascinating. What's the difference between each approach? So Rabbeinu Yerucham says that why do we count the weeks? He says the purpose of counting the weeks is in order for us to remember the Omer. Why do we count the days? We count the days in order so we can connect Pesach to Shavuot. Now, the problem with that is, if you had to choose, Which one will connect Pesach to Shavuot? Weeks or days? What does your intuition tell you? If you had to choose, which one is about... There's two different mitzvot. One are called days, one are called weeks.
Weeks.
And then you have two different components of it. One is Shvat Omer, and one is Chag related. If you had to line them up, you would align weeks with
Again.
Shavuot, and you'd align days with
The
the Sfira. And he flips it. So Rabbeinu Yerucham has a very interesting approach. He holds that there's two different mitzvot. And then, and by the way, I want to correct myself. I said something which I think actually is mistaken, and I can't remember. I believe he actually says both mitzvot are from Vayikra.
Oh, so not.
But mitzvah from Vayikra, my mistake. And he says Dvarim is repeating a mitzvah that was said earlier. And then he goes on to say that the weeks are reminiscent of Shvat Omer, and the days connects Pesach to Shavuot. Korban Omer, I should say. Okay? Comes on the Rambam, and now you'll understand what he is explaining and what he's arguing on. Okay? So he's going to define it himself and clearly argue on Rabbeinu Yerucham. So follow with me, source 4. Fine.
Rabbeinu Yerucham actually says that you make two separate.
Very good. Right, exactly.
That's crazy.
Two different bracha. Right, it's crazy. Okay, so take a look at source 4. The mitzvah 161. He should zivan lispor miktsira ta'omer tisha v'arba'im yom. 49 days. V'umru yitala usfartem lachem merachad Shabbat. Here we go. Vida. Kikamo shenit chayvu beit dim limnot shenot yovel shana shana ushmita shmita. As I said earlier, I want to explain to you, gentlemen. There's a mitzvah in the Torah for Beit Din to count the years. What's the source? Flip the page. Source 6. V'safarta lecha sheva shabtot shanim sheva pamim. There's a mitzvah. Who's v'safarta lecha? Everyone agrees v'safarta lecha is referring to not to individuals, but what's lecha? Beit Din. Everyone holds that Sfira of the years leading to Shemitah and Yovel is a chiyuv of Beit Din. Meaning, every individual doesn't have a chiyuv. The chiyuv is on Beit Din. That will be very important. Okay? So again, the Rambam says there are different places in the Torah that talk about counting. There are 3 major places in the Torah, by the way, that talk about counting. One is the years, Shemitah and Yovel. 2 is the classic Shvat Omer. There's another mitzvah of counting that married guys know. There's a mitzvah for a woman to count Shav Nikiyim, 7 clean days, so she goes to mikvah. Okay? And Shav Nikiyim, there's no bracha, because, you don't know, maybe she'll bleed in the middle of it. Okay? The other 2, we say a bracha.
Is there a mitzvah to count to, what's called, when it falls out on Erev Pesach, every 39 years? Birkat HaChama?
No, there's a mitzvah to count that. And Birkat HaChama, it's not a din d'oraita.
I have no idea.
It's in 23 years.
It's in 23 years?
Yeah.
I remember when it happened.
Wait, how often does it come out?
Every 28 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
28 years.
Yeah. It was a,
Just before Pesach, I remember.
right, Erev Pesach. It was a Friday when we did it last time.
It's so rare that you never learn about it.
Yeah, it was actually, it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So before we did a whole, shiurim on it. It's kind of like Shemitah. Every 7 years people talk about Shemitah. No one talks about it again. So that's like when there's actually, it's pretty cool. This is way off topic, but there's pretty cool. They saw pictures of like Birkat HaChama in New York City, 80 years ago, three rounds ago. It's pretty cool.
There's a whole story that Chabad, they couldn't see it. It was cloudy or whatever, so they chartered a plane.
Really?
They go up and so they can make it in the sky. Yeah.
So the Birkat, I don't know where you guys were, but 5 years ago it was cloudy.
Yeah.
We had to wake up early, and it was freezing cold. I remember staying with a winter coat on.
I was in LA, so
You know, it was nice and warm.
it was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was freezing cold, and it was cloudy. And then the moment there was enough sun, the word went out, and everyone went outside to make the bracha. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, fine, but so there is no mitzvah to count Birkat HaChama years. which is our purpose of the topic, right? So those are the places where there's mitzvah to count. Now, let's go back to the Rambam. Second line, third line, and source 4. Kach chayav kol echad v'chad mimenu limnot yimei omer yom shavua shavua. So says the Rambam, there's a mitzvah to count by Beit Din, Shemitah, and Yovel, and there's a mitzvah for every individual to count days and weeks for Svat Omer. I'm going to prove to you. Shu amar tisperu chamishim yom v'amar shavua tispor lach v'kmo sheminyan hashanim v'hashmiti mitzvah achat. And now here is the Rambam. The Rambam says, look, just like counting the years of Shemitah and the year of Yovel is 1 year. The Shanim and the Shmitim, right? There's mitzvah to count the years and the Shemitah. One mitzvah. It's one mitzvah. So, what do we say this in Lumdish? There's one mitzvah that has two components. One component is days and one component is weeks. But it's one mitzvah. One mitzvah requires how many brachos? One bracha. And that's what everyone, right? Whoever counted one mitzvah, that's what they say. Now, the al yitacha amram. Don't be deceived. Don't be fooled by the Gemara Menachos, which says mitzvah minei yomei, mitzvah minei shvuei, v'tirshoshem shtei mitzvah. Don't be confused. Just because the Gemara says mitzvah to count days and weeks, don't think that means there's two mitzvot, i.e., like Rabbeinu Yerucham. Ki kol chelak v'chelak mechelkei ize mitzvah she'ila chalakim mitzvah l'sor chelak she'u mimenu. There's two components. You have two components of a mitzvah. So when the Gemara says mitzvah limino yomei, mitzvah shvuei, doesn't mean two mitzvot. It means there are two different components of the same mitzvah. V'omnam hayu shtei mitzvot. If they're going to tell the two mitzvot, amru minyan hayamim mitzvah, minyan hashva mitzvah. And you're going to tell them there's two mitzvah. One is mitzvah to count days, mitzvah to count weeks. V'zema shelo ya'alem l'mishe yitam hadavar. He says, come on. Anybody who knows how to read knows that's not true. Ki ata shetamar chova la'asor kach v'kach hine lo yitchayev mizeh amar shapula hi mitzvah b'fnei atzma, that it's two separate pula b'fnei atzma, v'raya habrura al zeh hayotenu monim hashvuot gam kein b'chol laila. He says, I'll prove to you there's one mitzvah because the Shavuot lingers. Second week, it lingers. He says, so it's not a separate mitzvah. You're counting the same thing for 6 days straight, or I guess 7 days straight. You're counting the same thing. If there was a separate mitzvah to count weeks, you only would say what week it is 7 times, not every single night of that same week. That's the Rambam's proof. And by the way, Rabbeinu Yerucham holds, you recite 2 brachot. So the Rambam feels he needs to attack Rabbeinu Yerucham and say he's wrong, and he argues, here's my proof, Aval mitzvah or the OMER is just like we said, and he ends with, and mitzvah and women are exempt. Now, why would women be exempt from such a mitzvah? Why are women exempt from such a OMER? It is mitzvah aseh shos hagroma. It's time bound, meaning I can't count Shvat Omer today. I can't count Shvat Omer. I can't count Shvat Omer in January. I can count Shvat Omer today, right now. Therefore, it's time bound. Okay. So the Rambam argues in Rabbeinu Yerucham. Rabbeinu Yerucham holds, just to reiterate, gentlemen, there are 2 different mitzvahs, one to count days, one to count weeks. And he says that the weeks are connected to Korban Omer, and the days are connected to Pesach, leading to Shavuot.
Well, what's the purpose of Pesach leading to Shavuot?
Remember that in the Torah, there's no, what's the calendar date of Shavuot in the Torah? Nothing. We don't know. We have to figure it out. Okay, got to take out a pencil, a math. Right? So the Gemara even asks, when's Shavuos? Is it the 6th? Is it the 5th? Right? Depends on how many days are there in Nisan, how many days are there in Iyar. Right? Yeah.
So can't you argue that the days is the weeks is a countdown to Matan Torah, and therefore women also receive Torah, so therefore Afin Hayiv Tones, and therefore they'd be chayav to count.
What you just said is a Ramban. Beautiful. Very good. Hold on. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Comes along the Chizkuni, and the Chizkuni actually says the following: is there a mitzvah for Beit Din to count Sfrat Omer? We all know that there's a mitzvah, because remember, take a look at source number 1. What does 1 say? Usfartem lachem. Source 2 says, Shiva Shavuot Tispor Lach. Compare that language to source 6, V'safar Talacha, which is Beit Din. So the question is there a separate chiyuv for Beit Din to count Sfrat Omer? What would be the rationale? Maybe you could argue source 2 is a chiyuv Beit Din. If source 1 is in plural, Usfartem Lachem means that every individual has a chiyuv Usfrat Omer. So then what's source 2? Tispor Lach. Maybe one could argue there's a separate chiyuv of Beit Din to count. Comes on Rav Soloveitchik, and he says he's going to use Rabbeinu Yerucham's model, but he's going to modify it. Meaning, he's going to argue, yes, there's only one mitzvah. One mitzvah that has 2 components. Component A, days. Component B, weeks. And the Rav said the days are based on source 1, and it's a chiyuv of the yachid. What's the chiyuv of the yachid? To count relating to Korban HaOmer, 49 days. Usfartem lachem. But there's a separate chiyuv. Meaning there's a separate facet of the chiyuv. And that is maybe mutelet al Beit Din. And what is their obligation? To count, the weeks. From Pesach to Shavuot. Why is it that the Beit Din has a chiyuv for weeks? Answer, because any time you want to use a calendar date, that's based on Beit Din. What's the connection between Beit Din and the calendar? Simple. Who establishes the calendar? Who establishes Rosh Chodeshes? It's Beit Din. So it makes sense that Beit Din has a chiyuv of weeks. Because if Shavuot, which is a chag, when is a chag? According to the Torah, a chag is when Beit Din says a chag. How many days are in this month? I don't know. Depends on what Beit Din decides. I don't know what Shavuot is. I know that Shavuot's in 50 days. What's the calendar date? I don't know. I got to wait and see what's going to happen, what Beit Din's going to say. Is this Mala, is this Chaser? So explain Rav Soloveitchik, there are 2 different components to the mitzvah of Sfrat Omer. So he's borrowing that from your Rabbeinu Yerucham, but he's saying there's only one mitzvah that has 2 components, and he's also going to flip Rabbeinu Yerucham, and he felt that it makes more sense to argue, which I think is intuitively more correct, right? To say that the days are based on the yachid, because that's counting, and the weeks, or the chiyuv, maybe Beit Din. Source 2 is Tispor Lach, that talks about weeks. Shiva, Shavuot, Tispor Lach. Beit Din should count 7 weeks. Why should Beit Din have this chiyuv? Because it's mutelet aleihem to count the weeks. They establish the calendar date. So the chiyuv to count from Pesach and to bridge and connect Pesach to Shavuot is the chiyuv which is mutelet al Beit Din. Now, do you make a bracha on that? Maybe not. I don't need to say you have to make a bracha on that. In fact, the Chizkuni al Torah says there's a chiyuv on Beit Din, but they don't make a bracha on it. Meaning it's an integral part of Sfrat Omer, but it's not a separate mitzvah. It's component of the sphere. Hear the difference? It's part of Sfrat Omer. It's not a separate mitzvah of Sfrat Omer. And the Chizkuni says, look at, first of all, let's read a Sifri in source 5, which I think you'll find fat. Shava Shavuot Tispor Lach, and this is where this is the source for Rav Soloveitchik. Bebeit Din minyan kol echad ve'echad. We see there's a chiyuv of Beit Din, and the chiyuv of Beit Din is based only on the Sifrei and Devarim. It's not based on Emor. It's based in Devarim, because Devarim it says 7 weeks and Lashon Yachid, and we know Lashon Yachid is a chiyuv of Beit Din. Where do we know that from? Shemitah Yovel. Shemitah Yovel it says V'safartal lecha. So therefore, Sheva Shavuot Tispor Lach chiyuv Beit Din. Exactly the sources of the Sifrei. Source 5. Beveit Din minayin. Beveit Din. We have a chiyuv Beit Din. Uminayin l'kol echad ve'echad. How many is a chiyuv for every individual? Talmud Lamar u'sotem lachem the Shabbat. So we see here's the source in the Sifrei, where the Zechi of Beit Din is Tispor Lach, and the Chiyuv of Kol Echad V'Echad is Vayikra. This is what the Rav said is how we make the two different components of the same mitzvah of Sfrat Omer. The individual days, Korban Omer, source 1, Emor. Source 2, weeks, Beit Din, connect, Pesach to Shavuot. They're in charge of Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. Beit Din is in charge of the Zmanim. Beit Din is in charge of making that bridge in Pesach and Shavuot. Says the Chizkuni, U'svartelech mimachad Shabbat al yidei sheshiva Shavuot elu ben shnei rashei Zmanim shel k'tzir sarim v'shel k'tzir chitim shemitzvah shemita noheget b'hem v'heim shalu amud yomim. Okay, and that's the that's what I want to show. Sorry, it's Pasuk Tet Zayin. Go down to this. Flip the page for a second. Tis Bruch HaMishim Yom v'tzarich levarech sharei ein kan hefsek. Okay, I mean the chiv to count 50 days. But where does he say you don't count the Beit Din? There's no chiv to count. Oh, there it is. Sorry, my mistake. Source 7. I knew it was somewhere here. The Chizkuni on Shemitah and Yovel says, "U'svartal ha'chashav doshanim lefi she'ein kan elas rachat v'beveitin v'etzrich levarech." Aval Omer dichtiv be'shtei sfirot echad barshad Omer v'echad barshad Re'eh echad leveitin v'echad letzibor tzrich levarech. That's what I want to show you. So we see the Chizkuni says that you make a bracha, that the bracha that you make on Sfrat Omer has a component of the Beit Din. So Beit Din might not make a separate bracha. That's not so simple to make. But when you count, you include, it's subsumed under that idea. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. Okay, now the Rambam writes in source number 9. Oh, before we do the Rambam, there's a Shita of the Bahag. We're very choshesh. The Shita of the Bahag says, and everyone knows the Shita, what happens if you miss a full day of the Sfira? You don't get one. Why? Because he says that the entire Sfrat Omer is one mitzvah. You miss a component. You miss day 21. Your day 22 is locked. That's a minority opinion. By the way, I spoke this morning after the 7 o'clock meeting, like the 30 seconds for halacha. I made reference. My head was in Sfrat Omer, so that's what I didn't get into so much details. The 30 seconds for Torah. But what happens if it's a suffix? I don't know if I counted or not. The day's over. I missed it. So it's Friday night. I don't know if I counted or not. I don't know if I counted. I made it really Shabbos. I don't know if I counted. It's now Sunday. I counted. So we say suffix. You counted. Why? We allow you to count the bracha tonight. Why? What's the rationale behind it? Either maybe you did count suffix. Not you for sure didn't count. I can't remember if I counted. My dad counted. Did I count with him? Or was I benching still? Or was I eating? Or was I schmoozing? Or was I cleaning the dishes? I don't remember. Right? So if you argue and you say the following, suffix, what's a suffix? Maybe I counted, maybe I didn't count. It's a suffix to really hold like the bag. Most Rishonim hold that every night's a separate mitzvah. Since you have a sfeik sfeika, you can count with a bracha. That's what we hold. By the way, same thing applies by Shkia. Someone texted me that they remembered counting at 8:03 p.m. Shkia was 8:02. Right? They counted a minute after Shkia. Let's say they really did count after Shkia,
Maybe
right?
for the day before.
Yeah, right. They forgot last night. Yeah, right, of course, right, sir, thank you. They forgot last night. Tonight, it's 8:03 they counted. And they know for sure they didn't count for the past 24 hours and 10 minutes, whatever it is, right? Can they count? 24 hours and 1 minute, right? Can they count tonight with the bracha? Same idea. Safek, first of all, Ben Hashmashos. Safek Yom, Safek Laila. Safek hold the Bahag. Safek you don't hold like the Bahag. You can count. But the only thing is, though, you should be machmir that for tonight. You can't count. You can't count at 8:03 last night and at 8:04 tonight. That's a stira. You gotta wait till Tzeis Kochavim. And you should probably wait for a very late Tzeis Kochavim, just to be sure. And really, I said to him, you should maybe be machmir for the rest of Svira, to hold, like Rabbeinu Tam or something, to hold this way. That's very machmir. But at least wait, 20 minutes after Shkia, half after Shkia, not to do like what we do sometimes in Shul, 10 minutes after Shkia, but wait till a much later time. So that's the So that's the Bahag number 8. That's quoted by the Balei Tosfot that says about Bahag Katav Decha de Inish Lavarch Balayla Yimna Lamachar Blo Bracha. And what happens if you forget? Oh, thank you. And what happens if you forget a full 24 hours? Forget to count at night. Bahag says count during the day. So the question is, why do you like to count during the day? If you hold that you have to count the beginning of the day, you should not be able to count during the day. You missed the time for Sfat Omer. Sfat Omer is at night. It's the beginning of the night. How can you count during the day? You missed it. When you count during the day without a bracha, it should be. You missed it. Then the Bahag goes on to say, but if you forget the night and the day, you go on, you don't count anymore. Why? Because you lost Tamimot. So the question is, the Rav Soloveitchik said, why is it that the Bahag argues you can count during the day without a bracha? It should be. You're supposed to count the beginning of the time. If this is the time for the mitzvah, you lose the mitzvah, you lose it. You have to eat matzah at night. You have to eat matzah the night of Pesach. Right? You can't eat it during the day. I mean, you could over the mitzvah. Okay, so it says, but Erev tochlu matzot. It says at night time, not the day. So he says, what do you mean? Isn't the mitzvah to cancel the Omer also the night? Why is it? So the whole day is part of the mitzvah? He says, why is that? So, question 1. Question 2, and this already Josh Lita alluded to, the Ramban has a crazy chiddush. The Ramban on the Gemara in Kedusha. You know the Gemara in Kedusha, we talk about mitzvah to say shazon grama. Everyone loves that Gemara, right? You know, kaftet, lamed, lamed aleph, right? Women are chai for this, men, bris milah, pijona ben. You ever learn that Gemara? But what's the kind of Gemara that people like to learn in high school? It's a good high school Gemara, right? So says the Ramban. It's an amazing Ramban because he lists 2 examples in source 10 of mitzvahs. Look what he says in line number 2. Ube mitzvah asay she'ein hazman grama shiur tuva. I'll give you an example. More the kavod, bikurim, chala, kisu adam, reshit agez, matanot, meaning various matanot of kahuna, and sfat omer, prika, teina, pidyon petach hamor, v'rov. He says that sfat omer is a mitzvah asay shelo hazman grama. What are you talking about? He says, Ramban said that counting the Sefira is not time-bound. I understand why Matnot Kahuna isn't. I understand why Reshita Gez isn't. I understand why Kibbud of the Aim is not time-bound. But isn't Sfat Omer connected to the calendar date? Explain to Rav Soloveitchik the following. A beautiful insight. He says, no, there are 2 components of Sfirat Omer. Component number 1 is counting Sfirat Omer there happened to be the Pesach and Shavuot. That's a Korban Omer. That is clearly time-bound. But there's a second component of Sfirat Omer, and that's leading to Matan Torah, connecting Pesach to Shavuot. That's not, women would not be exempt from that. They're chayav in every aspect of a yontif. We know that we don't say, oh no, women are exempt from mitzvah that pertain to Yontif. Women are chayav for, but the calendar date of Pesach is the 50. They're chayav. Women are chayav for all aseis, not aseis of Shabbos, or aseis, not aseis of Pesach or Shavuos. Women are obligated in the Yontif of Shavuot. It's a calendar date. It doesn't matter. Women are chayav for chagim. Okay, maybe Sukkot they're patur from, right? But the Yontif itself, the idea of the Yontif, women are chayav, even though it's a calendar date. So the Rav Soloveitchik said the Ramban maybe is telling us that the second component of Sfirat Omer, the notion of bridging Pesach to Shavuot, of leading up to Matan Torah, that women are chayav for. Why wouldn't they be chayav for that? It's Yontif. It's Yontif related. It's not. They're chayav for the Yontif of Pesach. They're chayav the Yontif of Shavuos, and therefore maybe the Ramban holds that's why women are chayav for Sfirat Omer, which is the truth is you do see women who attempt to count the Sfira. Maybe this could be why. Because maybe it's not necessarily mitzvah aseh Ramban. I think the Ramban might be a lone soldier on this, by the way. But said the Rav, we see here's an aspect of this idea of, because otherwise, what's the havmina of the Ramban? How can you say a woman is chayav for Sfirat Omer? The answer is it's yontif related. That's the second component of the chiyuv beitin, of bridging Pesach to Shavuot. So it could be only durabanan chiyuv. Maybe, I don't know. Right? Maybe the Raisa Chiyuv, I'm not so sure. Probably only the Rabbanan, but it doesn't matter. Bisman hazeh, maybe on the Rabban and Chiyuv, they still have a Chiyuv to do it, to connect Pesach to Shavuot.
So do we pass the woman she can't?
I think women can. Women, yeah. Meaning, first of all, for Ashkenazi, for sure you can. Because Ashkenazi women make a bracha, mitzvah and grama. Sfaradim, it's not so simple. Sephardi women usually do not make a bracha, mitzvah taseh shasman grama, right? They don't make a bracha on the total love, on brachos in the morning, on like Berchot Shema, they don't make a bracha. Sephardi women, you don't realize that. Sephardi women don't make a bracha on such things, yeah. You wouldn't know. But Ashkenazi women do. We live in the Ashkenazi world, so they do.
I've never practiced Judaism as a Sephardi woman.
That's true too. Okay, for more than one reason, I hope. So so the Rav also said, now I'm going to explain to you why it is the Bahag felt that you should still count during the day. Why? You're right, you missed the times for Sfrat Omer, that's night. But bridging Pesach to Shavuot, you have the 24 hours to do it. So you didn't do it at night, you can't make a bracha. Why? Because there's two different components. One component is the Korban Omer, make the bracha at night, you missed it. So you can't make a bracha during the day because you missed part of the mitzvah, but you still have to count without a bracha because you got to, what? You're bridging Pesach to Shavuot. So the Rav answered Rabbeinu, the Bahag, why can you count during the day without a bracha, and trying to explain the Ramban with the same answer. And I think from a hashkafic perspective, this is fascinating. Why? Because, everyone always gives like vorts, count it, but we really see there really is this connection to Pesach to Shavuot. The Ramban on the Torah actually says that these are days of Chol HaMoed. Right? Pesach is the beginning of Yontif, Shavuot is the end. What's in between? Chol HaMoed. Just like Pesach has day 1, Pesach has day 7, Sukkot has day 1, because otherwise, Shavuot, there's only one day Yontif. We don't see a parallel to that anywhere. And the answer is, you're right. It's not one day Yontif. It's because we know that all Yontifs are connected to 7. So really, the Yontif, the Chag begins with Pesach, and it's 7 weeks of Chol HaMoed, so to speak, leading up to Shavuot. Right? Which is a korban in the beginning, there's a korban at the end, from Su'or to Chita. From animal food to human consumption food, right? So I think this is a fascinating component to it. We always think it's a nice vort, but really this is a halachic component to it. It's the second integral part of, Sfrat Omer, is bridging Pesach to Shavuot, is finding that calendar date, is a pasuk, Shiva Shavuot Tispor Lach. We have an obligation, we have a chiyuv, to make that bridge to lead up to Matan Torah, to lead up to Shavuot. Not as a shkafa component, and it's an actual part of the chiyuv. And that chiyuv is mutelat on women, on men, on everybody, to make that connection between Pesach to Shavuot, from Yetziat Mitzrayim to Chag of Matan Torah. And I think also the idea is that you don't just leap into Shavuot. You have to build up. You have to, one day at a time, build and build a little bit more each and every single day. And what happens if we all know, if you build a building that has 49 bricks and you miss a brick, your whole structure potentially will be very wobbly. You ever play Jenga, right? So I guess certain bricks, maybe you can't take out, right? I don't know. I don't know if I want to stand this on a Jenga construction. Right? That's a good riot, right? But I mean, you build a building, no one says, okay, I'll skip a brick here. No, we know the integrity of a structure is to have all the components of all the bricks in order to maintain that sense of integrity. I think that's also part of what is going on here as well. By the mitzvah of Sfrat Omer, we see here these two different components. According to most Rishonim, with only one mitzvah. And I think that's two different aspects that we have to really appreciate. It's not just about the korban, but it's also about building and leading up to the Chag of Matan Torah. Shkoyach, everybody. Thank you.